In this video, I'm going to give you a short hint for this last homework problem on homework number 6, which is here, number 2.2. And the question is to write out nested for loops that create a matrix that looks like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way to 15, and then to there, all the way to 20. Now, this homework was designed to get progressively more difficult, but to build on things that were done previously. So one of the things I did previously was to write this program. And in the previous hint, I omitted this part where there was a counter. But let's look at what that counter is doing. And the first thing I want to do is write a nested for loop that creates a matrix that has 5 columns and 4 rows. So let me go back to my program, and I want to have 4 rows and 5 columns. So here's a nested for loop, and here is a wrong answer. M of ij is equal to 1. I will execute this and save it, and then type untitled, and what you see created is a matrix M that has all values of 1. That is not what we wanted. Now let's go back to that other program where I had this thing where I was doing counter. I said counter was equal to 0, and then counter is equal to counter plus 1. And I will save that. I will save that. Now, save. And I will type untitled. I have never defined M, so let me do a clear statement here. Everything's fresh. Get rid of this M statement and run. Save. CLC. Let me rerun it because it wasn't saved last time I did that, because I'm fixing Macs and PCs which have different control buttons. That will not be on the quiz. Untitled is here. So it looks like the first step, it didn't do anything because I put a semicolon there. And it looks like what this thing is doing is counting from 1 to 20. How do we know that's 20? 4 times 5 is 20. And if you use the techniques in unraveling nested for loops, which begins with unraveling a single nested loop, the innermost loop, you would realize that this thing is counting because it's incrementally going from 0, and that counter is equal to counter plus 1 is getting executed 20 times. Okay, so let's go back to the problem statement. The problem statement is to write a nested for loop that creates a matrix that looks like this. We have a nested for loop that will spit out the numbers from 1 to 20. And here is a program, I of j, which will assign the value 1 to each matrix element. And so my hint is that somehow we need to combine what's shown on the screen here to assign the matrix elements values of counter, such that we get the matrix elements to be the numbers 1 through 20. So that is my hint. If you get stumped on this first one, what I would suggest is to just enter this for your answer, just for partial credit. Even though it's doing the wrong thing, at least you wrote a nested for loop, and you can move on. Let's ask what's going on this second loop. It's saying, assuming that you got this one correct, or perhaps you didn't get it correct, but you just got a matrix. Use a single if statement, modify the nested for loop so that it creates a matrix that has all zeros in the third row. Third row. 1, 2, 3, third row. Going back to our program, here we're assigning values to row I, column J, and I varies between 1 and 4, j varies between 1 and 5, corresponding to the number of columns for j and the number of rows for I, and we're setting each the value of 1. So to figure out what this is doing, you need to break it down into more simple parts. In other words, you can unravel those two for loops, or if you have experience with how this works, you can realize that what I'm saying is an if statement that has a condition if row 3, then do something, and end. So let me move this up here. So here we have a matrix with all elements I and j equal to 1. And now I'm saying that if I corresponds to row 3, then we want to do something. So what this if statement is doing is actually saying if I is identically equal to 3, do something. What do we want to do? Well, we want to say, in that case, m of I comma j is equal to 0. So this will get you this part. It'll get you all the third row to be all zeros. And then the question is how do you get row 3 but only columns greater than 2, namely 3, 4, and 5? How do you modify this so that instead of setting all values to 0 for row 3, you only modify the values for columns 3, 4, and 5? Said another way, how do you modify it so that you only set values to 0 in the matrix when j is greater than 2? And so that statement is a hint, and another hint is that it will require a nested if statement. So in other words, inside of here, between this if and this end, you will want another if statement that makes a check, and if that check is true, it does something. And it does something is it sets m of I j equal to 0. And so that concludes this hint.